Hi everybody, my name's Amelia and welcome back to my channel. So recently I've been on a tarot kick, so for the next few videos we're going to be talking about tarot stuff because that's just what keeps happening. I have a lot of ideas, I have some response videos I want to make, so expect that. But today I thought it would be interesting to tell you guys how I learned the tarot and to give you my best recommendations on learning it. So I know that for some of you, you might be new viewers to my channel, hi there, and you're looking for some resources on learning how to read the tarot, and for others of you, you've been on my little corner of YouTube and you've been hanging out with me for a while, and whether you are attempting to learn the tarot or you already know it, I thought it would still be fun just to give you a glimpse into how I did it. So this video is framed around the idea that you can learn tarot within 1 month. And by that I mean you have to kind of like work on it every single day. But you can very much learn it within a month. Personally, I did actually learn the tarot within 1 month, kind of. I had tarot decks for a while prior to learning the cards officially. I actually just used a bunch of guidebooks and online resources to read the tarot prior to my attempt to actually learn it for myself. And then I spent the entire month of October last year, not this year, but last year, literally just studying the tarot so I could learn it and give readings to my friends around Halloween. And so I sort of learned tarot within a month, but I have to point out that tarot is definitely an ongoing learning thing. You can just learn the tarot and, of course, read with it after a month, but ideally you will continue to learn more and gain a better understanding with the cards, gain a better relationship with the cards as time goes on. And so while this video is going to teach you how to just straight up learn it and give you sort of a little bit of homework, or like, what are those things called that you get in school? A syllabus. Even though this may be like a syllabus to learning tarot, it still very much is an ongoing practice and something that you have to kind of work with over time. But anyway, I thought today I'm going to show you how I learned it and how you might be able to learn it too. So before we get into today's video, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up because it really helps out me and the channel. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content like this and if you want to stick around. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so we're just going to hop right into the strategies and things that I started doing to learn the tarot. And we're going to start with week 1. So the first thing that you want to do before you start diving into tarot and trying to learn all the meanings at once is to pick one deck. I know that it can be kind of easy to gravitate towards several decks or try to use several decks when learning the tarot, but I would argue that it's better to learn from one deck. Now, I'm just going to assume for this video that you are brand new to the tarot landscape. If you're not, then you might already know some of the things I'm going to talk about, but if you are new, then I want to make sure we cover all the bases. The first thing you want to do is pick your deck, and I would recommend picking a tarot deck, not an oracle deck. I know that when I first got started, like learning about tarot and stuff, I had no idea that oracle decks existed, and I didn't realize they were separate things. But to put it plainly, a tarot deck has a system. It's built of 2 major components, the major arcana and the minor arcana. So the tarot traditionally has like characters like the Fool, the Empress, the Hierophant, the Lovers, but it also has the minors, which are like numbers ace through 10, and it has the court cards. Whereas an oracle deck can be about almost anything. It can be a spirit animal oracle, a plant oracle, crystal oracle. Oracle decks are created by the artist or the author, and they don't really have a set system unless the creator chose to give them one, but it's not like a rigid universal system, it's something that they created. So the first thing you want to do is figure out if you have an oracle deck or a tarot deck. And I would recommend that you pick a tarot deck if you're going to learn the tarot. If you have an oracle deck, then I can't teach you the system through this video because every oracle deck is unique and it is all built upon the creator's intent. So you're going to have to look at the guidebook for ways to learn that. But let's assume that you have a tarot deck in front of you. So again, you're going to see cards like the Sun, Death, the Hanged Man, the Tower, things like that. But you're also going to see like the Queen of Pentacles, or the King of Swords, or the Page of Wands, or the Five of Wands. You get the idea. So once you have your tarot deck in front of you, there's a few more things you need to determine before I can really jump into the bulk of this video. The major one is you need to figure out what system your tarot deck follows. Now, I do plan on doing a deep dive into tarot at some point. I'm still doing some research for that and trying to figure out how to condense all the information into a smaller video. But until that video comes out, for now, I just want to point out that there are several different systems of tarot. Some of the major ones would be the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, the Thoth tarot deck, and the Hermetic tarot, for example. There's also the Tarot de Marseille. So there are a few different systems of tarot. To know what system of tarot deck you have, it would help to look at the artwork, as well as the suits, as well as the major arcana cards. If you have a Thoth tarot deck, one of the easiest ways to know whether you have that or the RWS deck is to look at where strength and justice fall on your deck. It's also helpful to see if strength has been retitled to fortitude. Strength in the RWS deck is the 8th card and justice is the 11th, but sometimes those two cards get switched in Thoth-based decks. Once you know what system your tarot deck follows, it's a lot easier to learn the tarot, and sometimes the meanings change, the card names change, and even the elements can change depending on the deck that you have. For the rest of this video, I am only going to be talking about the traditional RWS deck, and the main reason for that is because this is the deck I started with. My main RWS deck is this classic design tarot. I got it off of Amazon years ago, and it's by a brand called Magic Seer, and it depicts the traditional Pamela Coleman Smith artwork. And so this is the deck that I know extremely well. The Thoth Tarot for me is something I'm still learning, so I don't gravitate towards those decks as frequently as I do my RWS deck and my RWS clones. So for the remainder of this video, we're just going to be talking about the RWS system. If you have a different system, I would recommend looking at other people who might be talking about those decks, because I personally just don't have that information. Another thing I want to say is that if I were to recommend someone to get a certain deck for learning the tarot, I would automatically recommend the traditional RWS Pamela Coleman Smith artwork. The reason I would recommend this is because the imagery, the characters within it, heavily relate to the meanings of the cards. And additionally, because this artwork is mimicked and cloned and recreated constantly in so many other decks, and it's a very widely used system, I think it's a lot easier to learn this because the artwork is very accessible and it's everywhere. But I also think that the artwork helps to tell a story, and it works tremendously well with helping beginners learn the tarot. I find the RWS just to be a bit more beginner friendly, and that's why I recommend it. So from here on out in this video, I'm just going to be talking about the RWS deck and how to learn that system. If you're starting out now, if we're going to start learning the tarot, put your deck in order. Get familiar with the order. Now, the order of the tarot deck is very simple. You get the Fool and you have the World. That's cards 0 through 21. And put all the cards in the middle of the major arcana. They all have numbers at the top usually. Just start from 0 and work your way all the way up to 21. Once you have the major arcana in order, put your minors in order. Now, there isn't really a structure to how the minors should be placed in the deck, as far as, like, let's say you've already got your Ace of Cups through King of Cups in order, and you're putting the other ones in order. There's not really a set way to mush the deck together. The way that I personally do it is major arcana, cups, wands, swords, pentacles. And the reason for that is, I don't even know. I don't think there is a reason. I just think that's the way I like to do it. But it doesn't really matter. You could do pentacles, cups, swords, wands. I mean, you could put it in whatever order you want, at least as far as that goes. Or if you have a guidebook with your deck, then you can put it in the order the guidebook follows, just to make things a little bit easier. If you're confused on how the courts work, it's very simple. It's a lot like a regular deck of playing cards, except there's one extra court card. So a regular deck of playing cards has the Jack, Queen, and King, and a tarot deck has the Page, Knight, queen, and king. So you can put it in order that way. Some decks will flip the king and queen or the knight and the page, but it kind of depends. The Rider-Waite-Smith deck, as far as I'm aware, just goes page, knight, queen, king. Alright, and now we get into one of the biggest things. We're going to actually start learning the tarot. So you've got your deck, you know the system, and you've got it in order. The next step is to learn the Fool's Journey. This is the most important thing, I think, when it comes to learning the tarot. Everything revolves around the Fool's Journey. Now, if you don't know what the Fool's Journey is, it's very similar to the hero's journey in literature. And so if you already know that, this should be fairly easy to learn. Now, I don't want to spend an entire video on the Fool's Journey, and I don't want to go into too much depth here because that will take a long time, but I do have a few resources that you could look to. One of the main resources I liked using when I first began tarot was 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack, and she dives into the Fool's Journey. The author also breaks up the Fool's Journey, or the major arcana, in sets. So you learn, I think you learn the Fool, the High Priestess, and the Magician together, the Empress, the Emperor, and the Hierophant together, and then the rest. I think they were clumped in groups of 3, but I don't truthfully remember. But learning the cards in groups of 3 makes it a lot easier to understand the Fool's Journey than trying to do it all at once. Though, one thing I liked doing was reading some of the guidebooks from other decks I have as you go through the Fool's Journey, because it's very similar. One of the decks I really liked doing that with was the Darkwood Tarot, because the guidebook is massive, and the creators they wrote down the Fool's Journey. I think the Fool in that deck is the witch, or like a young witch, and she goes through this whole dark wood and experiences everything that is on the Fool's Journey on the path. Learning the Fool's Journey is like learning a story, and I think that helps. If you learn tarot like a story, it makes tarot feel, I don't know, it makes it seem less like memorizing a bunch of flashcards and more like understanding the spiritual meaning behind it all. Also, with my version of reading the tarot, when I give readings to other people or even to myself, everything is looked at through the lens of what part of the story am I in? Am I at the climax of the plot? Am I at the rising action? Am I at the falling action? Have I reached the conclusion yet? And I think that seeing it that way really helps to understand the meanings that the deck is trying to send you, the messages that the deck is trying to send you. So for week 1, definitely focus on learning the Fool's Journey. I would also recommend avoiding reversals for now. So reversals do exist in tarot decks, meaning that if you shuffle your deck and you pull a card and it presents itself upside down, that can be a meaning of its own. It's a separate meaning from the upright version. However, that can be very confusing for beginners, so I would argue that you should just cut out reversals for now. I'm not saying that you can't read without them. Like, I personally like reading with reversals, so when I was learning the deck, when I was learning the tarot on my own, I focused only on the upright meanings, but when I gave myself, like, readings while learning throughout that month, I would just use other references to figure out what the reversals meant. And the goal was never to try to learn everything at once, because that's just too much. If you are looking for really, really in-depth, great meanings of the tarot, I recommend Biddy Tarot. BiddyTarot.com was one of the first places I found for tarot meanings, and to this day, I absolutely love it. I think that she covers so many points for every single card and applies it to almost every type of reading you can get. And I find that very helpful, especially when you're a beginner, and it helps too if you're learning the cards. So if you're learning the Fool's Journey, aside from using just Rachel Pollack's book, you can also use BiddyTarot.com and read the meanings of all the cards and just kind of see how it fits into a story. Another tip I have for week 1 of learning the tarot is to apply the major arcana to people, situations, and experiences in your life. Think about what the Fool represents. The Fool usually represents new beginnings, maybe a naive approach to life, more innocence, a sense of carefreeness. Is that a word? And it's just a very light card, but what does that make you think of? To me, it makes me think of childhood, and it makes me think of my first day of school, or the first time I went to a job, or anytime I start something new, really. And how there's just this sense of like, what's going to happen? Like infinite possibilities, you know? And I think that learning how each card can apply to your life and who they might represent is very helpful. Another thing I want to point out is that you are going to struggle to learn some of the major arcana cards. I remember when I was learning them, there were a few cards that clicked and there were a few cards that did not. And a few of the cards that just didn't click for me at the time were Justice and Judgment. For one, they both start with a J. And two, I just didn't have anything in my life that really felt like the judgment moment or the justice moment. And so I really struggled to distinguish a difference between them. With cards like this, I would say to spend more time actually trying to figure out what they mean to you and apply them to something in your life. Even something simple. I still don't really have a justice moment in my life that I can name. Even though I know what the card means, it just doesn't feel like anything to me. But Judgment does. I literally have the Judgment card on my altar right now because I am trying to connect with my higher purpose. I'm trying to connect with my higher self, my life path, and where I'm heading. That's one of the interpretations of Judgment. It can be about higher calling. And so that is something that I have finally grown an understanding with. As you learn the tarot, like I said, there will be cards that you relate to and cards that you don't. And one of the exercises that really helped me is to separate them into those two groups. Go through the major arcana once you have a general grasp of the card meanings. Which ones feel easy to understand and which ones are you struggling with? This can help you know what situations you've actually experienced in life and which ones you might need to experience, or at least which cards you're going to have to work a little harder to understand. That would be all that I would recommend doing week 1. So here's the tips again, and let's move on to week 2. Okay, so while I am breaking this up in weeks, you might need more or less time to work on these things. I would argue that you should probably use the whole time to practice, like the whole week at least. However, for some of you, it will take longer than a week, and that is because you have a life. You can't spend hours every day studying the tarot. So maybe you can. I could, but that was because of my personal situation at the time. But for some of you, you have jobs, you have families, you have kids, you have who knows what, all kinds of things going on in your life. So it may not be possible to dedicate hours every day to try to learn the tarot. So if this takes longer than a month, that's okay. But whenever you're ready, once you have a very good grasp of the upright meanings of the major arcana, we can move on to week 2's topic, which is all about the beginnings of the minor arcana. So as you'll remember from the beginning of this video, the minor arcana is broken up into 4 suits, much like a playing card deck. The 4 suits are Wands, Swords, Cups, and Pentacles. Each suit has an element attached to it. So for example, Cups are associated with the element of water, Wands with fire, Swords with air, and Pentacles with earth. At least in the RWS deck. One thing I had a lot of trouble with at the beginning was seeing swords as air. And that is because I guess when I thought of a sword, prior to learning the tarot, I thought of the sword as an aggressive, passionate, fiery sort of weapon. Maybe it's because I thought of like the knights that carry swords and fight dragons. Maybe it's because I knew too much about Game of Thrones. Maybe it's because, I don't know, I just always associated swords with fire. So that was a hard learning thing for me to overcome when it came to the tarot. But now I see the sword for its swiftness. I see the sword for its clarity, for being able to slice through situations, and the wand as being a tool of passion and magic. And I think that really helped me to separate the 2 elements. But one thing I would recommend is learning the elements of the suit and getting comfortable with the elements of each suit. The next thing you need to learn is the numerology. I believe Rachel Pollack touches on this in her book. It's been a while since I've read it, and I definitely need to read it again. But I think that learning the numerology behind the numbers ace through 10 that exist within the minor arcana, that will help you to derive meanings a lot better. To break it down on the screen, very, very simply, the aces represent new beginnings, and they're often very similar to the Fool. The 2s represent duality, 3s, community, 4s can represent both a sense of completion, stability, and rest. It sort of depends on the suit. 5s represent conflict, 6 represents like transition, celebration, movement, in a sense. 7s represent choices and sometimes deceit. 8s tend to represent another type of transition or swift movement or just moving from one chapter to another, kind of like the 6th. 9s represent fulfillment and desire, and 10s represent completion. That's a very, very, very general understanding of all of those. But it really can help you recognize what is happening in the cards that you are seeing. To use the example of a 5, which represents conflict, as a number, it represents conflict. If we look at the 5 of Cups, well, Cups is water. Water in the tarot represents emotions. So if we look at the 5 of Cups and we think conflict with emotions, then it can sound a lot like heartbreak or like ending to a relationship. If we look at the 5 of Wands, we think, okay, wands represent fire. So we're thinking about passion, we're thinking about creative energy, we're thinking about just a lot of energy in general. And conflict, a passionate conflict, maybe fighting with others. And that's kind of what's depicted on the card. The whole reason that I recommend learning the minor arcana this way rather than just jumping to the meanings is because there's going to be times where the meanings just evade your memory in the beginning. I cannot tell you how many times I forgot what a card meant. Let's just say I got the 9 of Cups and I saw it in a reading and I was like, what the heck does that mean? Like, the meaning is gone. I don't have it. I can't grasp it in my memory. So knowing the suit, which is water because it's cups, and knowing what that represents, again, emotions, relationships, and then seeing number 9, which is about wishing, fulfillment, desire, it helps to create a meaning when you're at a loss of what the actual meaning is. And typically, whatever you can create from those things alone is generally on the right track. I would personally recommend learning the elements and the numerology of the minor arcana before jumping into the courts. Court cards were something I struggled with so much in the beginning. So I would kind of avoid those for now. While you're learning the ace through 10, I would recommend avoiding looking at like biddytarot.com or a guidebook or Rachel Pollack's interpretations of each card, just for the time being, because I think it's important to grasp an intuitive understanding and a general understanding of the numerology and the element over the traditional card meaning. Of course, I would recommend looking at the imagery on the card as well in order to learn, because the imagery within the RWS deck is very potent and it also has such a great depiction of each card. I mean, this looks like fighting, doesn't it? That looks like a passionate conflict. I would also say that in week 2 you can learn the court cards, but this is something that I ended up struggling with a lot, and I would say that from week 2 onward, try focusing on the court cards as much as you can, because they're not as easy to learn as the minors, and I think part of it is because the traditional depictions of the courts is just a person, and there's a little less to grasp in each image. I mean, there's definitely something to grasp, but you kind of have to look for it. The best way I found to learn the court cards was actually something I learned from both Rachel Pollack's book, but also from one of the Thoth-based decks that I have. In my Arcana Isis Sakra deck, the courts have 2 elements listed on them. So if we look at the Page of Wands, there's the element of earth on one side and the element of fire. And the way that Rachel Pollack describes this is that pages are represented by earth, knights by air, queens by water, and kings by fire. So earth, air, water, fire for the courts. And so if you get, say, the Page of Wands, well, Wands represents fire, Page represents earth. We have earth of fire. And Pollack describes it a little better than I can, but think of what earth of fire might look like. Well, if the two, or what it would look like if the 2 elements came together. So it's Again, it's kind of hard to explain here, but it was definitely well explained in the book, and knowing the two elements associated with those things can help me kind of understand the meaning. That can help you to learn the court cards. Another way to help learn the court cards is to imagine them at a dinner table. So if you had the entire court of the cup, if you had the entire cups court at a table, what would they all be doing? And you can look at the meanings of each cards and see, and then try to decide what kind of character that would be and what they would be doing at a dinner table. Ultimately, I think week 2 should be about getting an intuitive understanding of the tarot and of learning how to use the elements and the numbers to create a tarot meaning. Because again, there are 78 cards. And if you do reversals, that is 156 different meanings. That is a lot. And if you are going to learn the tarot and you're going to try to learn all 156 meanings at once, it is going to be a nightmare. Even if you try learning just half of that and doing just the 78 upright versions, that is very challenging. So it's sometimes nice just to have the elements and the energies of those elements to fall back on when in doubt. Alright, so we're moving on to week 3. So it's week 3. To recap, we have an understanding of the major arcana, at least the story of the Fool's Journey, and possibly of each card, at least it ties with personal experience. We have an understanding of the elements and the numerology, as well as some of the courts, as well as the general meanings of the upright versions of the minor arcana. So for week 3, my best advice is to learn the story of the minor arcana. Now, the stories of the suit go from ace to 10, and this was probably one of the things that really, really helped me to become a better tarot reader. Now, when I see, say, the 7 of Swords in a reading, which by itself can mean being deceitful, it can mean trickery, sometimes it can be like running away from your problems or stealing or just some kind of like malevolent act. Not like violent, but mischievous at least. When I see that in a reading, I can now think of what came before that and what comes after. Well, what came before the 7 of Swords? The 6 of Swords, which is about transition, moving on, but carrying your baggage with you. And the thing that comes after is the 8 of Swords, which is all about feeling trapped and feeling as if you can't escape your situation. So I think that's really interesting, that there was a bit of movement, but you carried your problems with you, created more problems for yourself, or somebody deceived you, and now you feel trapped. And I think that knowing that story is very, very helpful. One person that I follow who I absolutely love her depictions of the tarot, of the stories of the suit, is Light Wands. She has a YouTube channel, but I found that I really appreciate her content on TikTok because she is really good at navigating the stories of the suit. She also encourages tarot readers to look at tarot in new ways and to try to expand their meanings beyond just the traditional elements and such. Again, as a beginner, I would say just focus on the elements for now and expand later, but the stories of the suit is very helpful. I also have a deck, the Mystical Fairy Tarot, which when you lay it out creates a story, and you can kind of look at the story and see how the characters and how the plot changes as cards continue on. The Prismavisions Tarot, which I do not own, also does this, and I think that those decks can be very helpful if you are learning the story of the minor arcana. And again, be sure to apply personal experiences to these parts of the story because that will help the suits make a lot more sense. By this point, I think that week 3 should have more focus on the court cards than just their elemental associations. This week 3, I think, would be the main week where you should learn the court cards. Learn who every single person is and what they represent. So instead of just learning the elements, like again, Page of Wands is Earth of Fire, or Queen of Cups is Water of Water, instead of learning those elemental things, try to learn exactly what the card means. This is also a good time to start doing your own readings and then writing them down. So do a little 3-card spread, 4-card, something small. And it's okay to go to the guidebook or to bittytarot.com or wherever to find the meaning of the card and then write down what you remember and how it applies to your life. Ultimately, practicing these readings is what's going to help you understand the tarot a lot more. Okay. This video is long, but we're on week 4. So by the time you get to week 4, you should at least know all of the upright meanings of every single card. I know it seems daunting, but since we've learned them all in small groups, I feel like it makes it a little bit easier. But now it's time to do it all together. One of the things I used to do, and this took a very long time, was to pull out the major arcana, pull out the suit of cups, then swords, and the rest, and I would just say the meanings out loud. Now, I would do this at different times of the day, and sometimes I didn't do it like all in one day, but I would try to say every single meaning out loud, like, oh, the Fool represents blank, and the World card represents blank, and so on. By week 4, you should be able to do that, or if not week 4, at least if you've done everything beforehand, even if it's been a few more weeks than that, you should at least be able to have a general understanding of the basic meanings of every single card, at least in their upright version. So now, if you want to use reversals, now is the time to learn it. My biggest tip for learning reversals is, for one, you have to know the upright meaning. If you do not know the upright meaning, the reversal is not going to help. But if, let's just say, you do know all of the upright meanings, when you're learning reversals, the biggest hint into what a reversal can mean is either A, it's an internal struggle. So I think of upright cards as being external, something outside of you is affecting you. So if we go back to that Seven of Swords, about trickery and deceit, usually I view that as an outside conflict. So somebody else is deceiving you. But when the Seven of Swords is reversed, it means there's an internal conflict. It means you are deceiving yourself. You are lying to yourself. Or you're filled with self-doubt, something like that. So that is one way I view reversals. Another way is a blockage. So let's say we'll use the High Priestess. Upright, she represents the subconscious. She represents a sense of spirituality. I think of the third eye and how that chakra is, and what that means for someone, and how having your third eye open means you're more in tune with the world and with nature, you're more connected to the divine, you're open to receiving messages. But when the High Priestess is reversed, I think of it like a closed third eye chakra. But I also think of it like being a blockage. There is a blockage between you and that connection to the divine. There is some kind of, things are a bit blurry, things are muddled, they don't make sense. So that's another way that I view reversals. And lastly, if it's not an internal struggle or a blockage, then it's just the opposite of the upright meaning. We'll take the Sun, for example. The Sun upright is joy and happiness and youthful energy, but reversed, it can mean depression, it can mean loss, it can mean devastation. So that's how I personally view reversal. This can take a lot of time to learn, but I think that at the bare minimum, one of the easiest ways to learn reversals is just to think of them as internal struggles, but eventually I would say try to branch out and read the reversal meanings and try to apply them and memorize them as best as you can. I would also say at this point to branch out from 3 card spreads, 1 card spreads. Don't do any more small spreads. I mean, you can. But I would say to branch out to more complex spreads like the Celtic Cross, which is a very classic tarot spread. But at least starting with the Celtic Cross, it can really help you to start a more complex reading, but while still using prompts. I've learned that when I do tarot readings, I personally don't like using prompts. I would rather lay all the cards out and tell it like one big story, rather than having prompts for every single card. But I would say that as a beginner, having prompts can be very helpful because at least it helps direct you in the right direction if you are confused. So, for example, if I laid down 5 cards in a row, I might view it all as one big story and try to tell it that way, but as a beginner that can be a little scary and you might be confused on what the meanings are. So instead, assigning a prompt or a keyword to every single position, like so 1 through 5, like there's 5 cards, so 1 can represent strengths, then weaknesses, then your present moment, your past, your future, etc. And those things can help you to understand the cards and what they mean in that spread. Week 4 is also a good time to get to know what your personal tarot rules are going to be, or at least your tarot ethics. For example, I don't actually like reading the future in tarot. So when I say near future, what I actually mean is where you're heading at the moment. So I don't read the future in tarot because I don't think that tarot can divine the future, personally. But if you believe that it can, you by all means can use it that way. I just personally don't see it that way, so the way I see near future cards, at least in my spreads, is that it is telling you your current direction. Where will you end up if you do not change or reroute your course? That's how I personally read it, and again, I think it's important to come to your own conclusions about what ethics and what types of readings you like to do, what you personally believe the tarot can do, and create those ethics by week 4. After about a month of that, you should have a very firm grasp of the tarot. Though, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's definitely an ongoing journey and it's an ongoing experience. You should constantly be learning and connecting with cards each day. As I mentioned, there are certain cards that to this day I still struggle to understand. Justice is one of them, because I haven't really been in a position that feels like a justice moment. The Wheel of Fortune, however, I am very well acquainted with. That card followed me for an entire year. But knowing what cards you struggle to understand and which ones you don't can also help you as a tarot reader, because you can start trying to focus on the ones you don't understand and try to find some understanding of meaning from them, whether you look to movies, books, or other people in your life who may have experienced those situations. Alright, I am tired. I've been talking forever. I really hope this video is not super long. My videos keep getting longer. I am sorry. But I hope that helped you to understand the tarot, and I hope that gave you an idea of what to do if you are a beginner in tarot or trying to learn it. And if you've been on my channel and you already have a general understanding of tarot, I hope this helps you understand how I learned it and my personal experience with the tarot, as well as just what I recommend. So anyway, thank you again for watching today's video, and without further ado, I will catch you next time.